Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's meeting. First of all, we'll read out the opening statement. In accordance with the Openness of Local Bodies Regulation 2014, this meeting is being live streamed and may otherwise be recorded, filmed or communicated on other media platforms. Recording of this meeting will be made available on the Council's YouTube channel shortly after the meeting. Both councillors and officers in attendance are reminded to make full use and to speak clearly into the microphones available at all times. Reminder that mobile phones should be turned off or on silent mode. Those present at the meeting should refrain from taking telephone. Okay, thank you. So, yes, apologies for absence, please.
Councillor Linda Broadley.
Councillor Linda Broadley. Anybody else? No. Steve?
Sorry, not Councillor Carter, Councillor Bentley. Sorry, I do apologise. Councillor Bentley.
Bentley.
Right, I saw you earlier. Councillor
And
Morris.
Councillor Morris.
Is attending.
And we can't see that, unfortunately, so.
Councillor Mrs Morris as well.
Okay. Any substitutes at all? Declarations of interest. Any interest to declare? Nobody? It'll be on the screen. It's the previous meeting. Reconfirm and sign the minutes of the meeting in accordance with Rule 19 of Part 4 of the Constitution. I've got one thing to raise on there, is that we did talk on time about notice on motion. We did talk about trolleys, and we talked about trolley-wise. Can I ask Mr. Gill if that information has been passed to members of the staff to act upon?
Yes, Chair, the website has been notified to members of staff through the bulletin. It's also on social media, so people can access it at any time.
Okay, thank you. The reason for that is that the people, the companies who subscribe to the scheme can't fine them for their trolleys because other ways of doing it. So that's the reason why. Trolley-wise, you can ring up and get it. Mr. Boyce?
Thank you, Your Worship. Sorry, clearly having a bad start. Thank you, Chair. Can I bring everybody's attention to page 5, item 31, resolved 3. Clearly that did not take place, and that is the result of the report this evening.
Yes. Okay. Those minutes? Son was a true record? Yes. Action list from the meeting. There was no action list from that previous meeting. Deputations?
I've received, Chair.
None received. And we go to performance update, page 7 to 39. I think if technology is working, Philippa Fisher should be online is the right word to use.
Thank you, Chair. I am indeed. If I can ask members to move to page 9 of the report, I'll start the corporate overview of performance. As members are aware, we have 3 main objectives, which our KPIs are linked to, which are building, protecting and empowering communities, growing the borough economically and providing excellent services. And we have 96 key performance indicators for our corporate plan. This quarter, 86 of those were due for reporting, and this is based on the green, red and amber signage. And we also have blue ranking and white ranking. So blue ranking is for indicators where work has yet to begin and cannot be ranked. And then the white rating is around not met due to circumstances outside of the council's control. So if I can move on to those indicators in the 86, 69 were given green status this quarter, which quarter 2, 16 were amber status and 1 was red status. This equates to 80% green, 90%, 19% amber and 1% red status. There is improvement versus Q1, in particular to the green status, which has increased by 5%. If I can now move to the performance charts, and this is based on the corporate priorities and objectives. So if I can work through those, the green targets, we had 69 indicators, as I mentioned, 80% achieved. For amber, we had 16 indicators, 19% achieved. And for red, we had 1 indicator and 1% achieved. If I break that down by corporate priority, so objective, the building and protecting and empowering communities, 24% were green indicators, equating to 75%. In the amber, we had 8 indicators, 25%, and in the red indicators, we had none this quarter. Growing the borough economically, we had 14 green indicators at 88%, 2 amber at 12%, and again, we had no red indicators. Providing excellent service, we had 31 green indicators at 82%, and at amber, we had 6 indicators at 16%, and at red, we had 1 indicator, which was 2%. If I move now to performance chart, and this is by the department, so by service area. So built environment had, in the green indicators, had 24 at 80%, with amber indicators 6 at 20%, and then had no red indicators this quarter. Customer service and transformation had 15 green indicators at 94%, and then 1 amber and no red indicators for this quarter. Finance and resources had 7 green indicators at 64%, 3 amber indicators at 27%, and 1 red indicator equating to 9%. And then law and democracy had 22 green indicators, 79%, 6 amber indicators at 21%, and again, no red indicators, so 0%. And then SLT, which I mentioned in Q1, was a new service area of measurement. There was 1 green indicator, so that was 100%. So, Chair, that concludes performance by corporate and objective, and also by service area as well. I'm happy to take any questions on that scoring and those KPIs now.
Any questions at all? No questions? Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. In that case, we'll move on to item number 3, which is the built environment update. Housing capital programme, I think, if we've got Chris Ayres online, have we?
Yes, Chair, thank you. I think, let's have a look. Sorry, it's just pulled me out of the running order. I thought Adrian was going first. Just bear with me one moment. Housing capital programme update. Basically, the spend that we've allocated to the improvements programme is looking like...
Chair, I'm going to start.
Sorry, Adrian, did you? Hello, sorry.
Lost Adrian.
Sorry, I lost my connection for a moment. Can you hear me, Chair?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, apologies for that. I was just saying I was going to make a start on presenting the built environment report, and then I'll hand over to Chris in just a moment. So I was going to start by running through the exemption reporting on page 12 of the report. The first 3 relate to economic regeneration KPIs. And I'm pleased to report that Jeffrey Kenyon, our new economic regeneration manager, started with us a few weeks ago. Jeffrey replaces Alex Ward, who left us back in the summer. The promotion of schemes to place young people in employment and the launch of the Business Inward Investment and Economy website are 2 actions that were not able to progress when the post was vacant, hence the amber forecast. However, Jeffrey will now be able to start moving these forward. With regard to a new health facility in South Wigston, we remain in close contact with the CCG, and officers met with them 2 weeks ago. The revised feasibility report was received yesterday, and we will arrange a further meeting with the CCG to discuss a way forward in January. In terms of light bulb, as stated in the report, the information wasn't available at the time of preparing the report. However, it subsequently was received, and this is now contained in Appendix 2 of the report this evening. So I'm now going to hand over to Chris Eyre, who will be able to talk you through the housing KPIs and also provide a general update in terms of the housing service. And then the two of us will be happy to take any questions after that.
Thank you, Adrian. Sorry about that, Chair. The running order threw me a little bit there. In terms of the KPIs that just like to talk about, one of the ambers is the policies, housing policies have not been updated yet. That's primarily because we're waiting to recruit, well, we have recruited to the post of a strategic and performance officer, and this will be one of the key jobs that she'll be looking at in the coming months. She's due to start on January the 3rd. The 90% of tenants satisfied with works carried out to their properties. This is for property repairs, so it's nothing to do with the improvements programme. This is the day-to-day repairs that get reported through. So we reported that we were 66% of tenants were satisfied with work we carried out, and that seemed quite low to us. And when we did some sort of investigation into that, what we found was the questions that we were asking were quite ambiguous. They were very much talking in general terms about repairs and not the specific repair a person had reported and subsequently had done. So we've amended our approach to gauging customer satisfaction, and hopefully in the next quarter we'll start to pick up on that. And then finally, relet times. Relet times at the moment we've reported as being at 40.6 days. That's the cumulative average for from April to September. Appreciate that this is some way short of the target. It is a phenomenon that's been experienced across Leicestershire, so other authorities are experiencing similar problems in terms of their void figures at the moment, partly due to COVID and other contractor issues. For us, we are still working on the processes and procedures we've got in place and still fine-tuning those. We are still confident. I'm not confident that we'll get to 25 days, if I'm being absolutely honest with you, but we will continue to come down in terms of average void times. Just providing a general update, on page 25 is your appendix 1. This is the housing improvement programme update. As you can see, we are pretty much on target to spend our budget allocation for the financial year. Our improvement programme to properties in terms of kitchens and bathrooms, we've completed. We have now completed our summer programme, and we are now scaling that down in terms of the work that we're going to commission over the winter months, mainly because of shorter days and weather issues, and it's just making sure contractors have enough time in a property to complete a job. In terms of door replacement, major adaptations, they're pretty much on course to be completed to budget by the end of the financial year. We are currently doing some fire safety works in terms of electrical inspections of blocks, such as Bolter Crescent, Bennett Way. What we are although in September I reported that we were only part way through it, I am able to say that as of today we're at 88% complete on that. That is identified, that work that we're carrying out is identifying a number of issues in terms of electrical upgrades that are needed to installations. That's primarily because a lot of properties that were inspected prior to 2019 probably haven't had an inspection, electrical inspection 2019 plus when the regulations changed. So there's been a change in regulations, which means electrical installations are tested on a different system now. So we are picking up a number of issues in terms of electrical installations. What we've also picked up on is there's potentially an issue in terms of smoke detectors in domestic properties. Of 100 properties that we've surveyed in the last 2 months, we found that 11 properties have got no smoke detectors at all, which has raised a bit of an alarm, and we are currently carrying out some work to get a full understanding of what the issue is in respect to smoke detectors, and that's a piece of work that we hope to complete by this December. In terms of gas boiler replacement, we have paused our gas boiler programme. That's in the main due to the green agenda and to take a view on if we're looking to install renewable sources of heating, such as air source heating or other sources of heating, electrical heating. So in terms of gas boiler replacement, we are only replacing at this moment in time boilers that fail completely, or it is not economically viable to repair that boiler. So we're not doing a boiler replacement program, but we are a gas boiler replacement program. But we are continuing to replace boilers that are broken. So that's the general position in terms of where we are with the housing improvement programme. If I can go back to, I believe it's page 11. There's page 10. Talked about the housing capital programme. In terms of housing options and homelessness, we're now the team are now making a move towards homeless prevention being the narrative that they talk about. So today we've talked about homelessness and the number of people homeless. What we want to really focus on is the prevention work and start the early intervention approach to homeless management. And we're hopeful, and in the last quarter, what we achieved was 38 homelessness preventions. So that work is in its infancy, but there is work to come. And I think what you'll start to see, members will start to see, is that rather than the number of homeless people we have on our books, it will be the number of homeless preventions we've made. In terms of gas safety, as of today, we were 99.79% compliant. Two properties have fallen out of compliancy. However, one was due a gas service today, but as of today, I wasn't able to find out whether that had been done or not. And one is due to go through a legal remedy. That's where we will apply to the courts for a warrant to gain possession, gain entry to the property in order to either carry out the gas service or disk the supply off for safety reasons. I've already talked on 3.5, I've already talked about the void calculations briefly. 3.6, cleaning. The clean team have made significant progress into engaging with their customers. They are leading the way in terms of the community clean events that we hold, and there are a number of events happening in the coming months that we will keep members informed through members' bulletin. We're also looking at recruiting to 2 caretakers. They will be part of the cleaning team and working on the estate. So we're not at the point of recruiting to those. We're hoping to recruit to those in January. And from there, happy to take any questions.
Right, okay, we've got several people. First of all, Mr. Boyce put his hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Could we turn firstly to page 26? Heating and boiler replacement. Now, my maths has never been great, and I think we've only got £26 and fourpence left because one number take away from the other. So basically, there's £26 left, but we then decide on the commentary urgent boiler replacement only. That makes sense because we spent all the money. However, the reason we've suspended is due to considerable renewable energy boilers and the possibility of grant funding, of which we can match fund with 26 quid because we've spent the rest or committed it. I'm confused by that, that whole line. Either the commentary is talking about the money being committed as not being spent, or it's doing something else. I'm confused by it. So some clarity over that would be helpful. And on housing voids, setting ourselves up, as most people are, to fail. Because if you had a property which became vacant and was structurally unsound, it may take months or even years to resolve, but it's still in the process. Unfortunately, I did a bit of statistics some years ago. I think it's the mode or modal, which is actually what the most prevalent number of properties are let by, relet by. So if we have 50 properties a year come free, and 40 of them are let within 20 days, that is a far better indication of what the problems are and how well we're performing than simply a mean, which is slewed out by the fact that some houses may take months to come back. So I think we need to do some work on the KPI to make it much more understandable. Thank you, Chair.
Hey, Mr. Eyre, would you like to answer the first question, please?
Yes, thank you. Yes, some of that boiler, the expenditure that we've allocated to boiler replacement is in a committed sum, because it's in line with some of the properties that are earmarked for improvement. So a kitchen improvement, there will be an allocation of around about £5,000–6,000 for a boiler replacement, sorry, £2,000 or £3,000 for a boiler replacement and central heating upgrade. So whilst the actual expenditure will be considerably less if we take out that committed sum. So what we've said is, no, as I've said, is we will pause the programme and only look to replace boilers that are beyond economical repair. So it is in the committed sum, in that we have committed a number of properties for kitchen improvements.
Right. Thank you, Chair. In which case, should we be required to make a decision on the capital programme because there is a opportunity of a grant or a need to change boilers, then this report is actually then becomes misleading. And it may well be, not for this evening, but for future reports, we may need to change the report to say spent and committed. Otherwise, you're going to have to go back, re-explain this, should we then decide to not have gas boilers but something else and have to spend more money on it. Then it looks like £26.40 is back on the agenda because I don't understand the rest of it. So we do need to break those two figures down in future.
Okay, thank you. That's it. We've got Mr. Allen next.
I asked two questions.
Yes, Chair. So the calculation of void, the void calculation definition is the definition that every social housing provider reports their voids on. That's why we changed it to include the tenancy start and tenancy end dates. That's why we changed that. I accept that there are properties that may take considerable time to get back into a letting standard because, for example, maybe there's no utilities to that property, or the utilities need replacing, such as a gas pipe would need replacing, and that could take up to 3 months. It could take up to 6 months. Those can be legitimately in the definition of the void definition can be taken out of the equation. So I do think there's some work that we will need to tease out that void time. But I'm not aware that to date that there's been any property, the properties that we've had that have been in relatively poor condition are the qualifying works to discount that void period don't exist. So it's not because it's just generally because they're in poor condition rather than a utility's missing or asbestos has been found in the property. So there are bits that we can discount as a void period, but to date there hasn't been any that are relevant to take out. So in terms of, I'm happy to revisit the definition and have a look at that. I could be led by you on that if you want me to look at revisiting that by talking to other local authorities to see if there's any exemptions that they use.
Okay, well, we'll do that, ready for the next meeting. All right. And we'll also look at the median or mean as well as a set figure. Mr. Allen, please.
Yeah. One of the questions I was going to ask was with regard to defining the void time, in particular with tenancy and how that is arranged, because I do remember some discussion we had in the past with regards to that. So that's something I like to have a look at. But also, what other factors are affecting the void time as well? Why are we not able to achieve this target of 25 days void time? That's one of the questions. And the second one was, with all this work that you've done with putting these brand new boilers in, and with this new sort of incentive for green efficiency and green boilers, are we going to have to go back and do all this work again at a later point just to meet this, these new green boiler standards? So those are the two questions I have.
Mr. Eyre.
So in terms of the new boilers, generally a boiler should last, we say that a boiler has a notional life of 12 years. So boilers that we're putting in this year technically won't, in fair weather should be ready for replacement in 2033. Although we won't meet the target for all our properties being sort of green by 2030, if we don't replace those boilers. So it's probable that some of the boilers, we may take them out prior to their life expectancy coming to an end. It's difficult to say because we've also not really committed to any particular form of boiler replacement at this moment in time. There's lots of other considerations to make. So boilers at the moment are capable of taking a mixture of gas and another element. Sorry. So they may be compliant going forward. We just don't know where the wind's going to go, whether it's going to air source replacement boiler or these hybrid boilers, hybrid of gas and another additive that goes into that. But the gas boilers that are being fitted now would be compliant with potentially a new source of a mixture of gas and another element.
Okay.
The question of the voids, the void definitions. If it's helpful for members, I can do a briefing note on void. On the void definition and how that's come about and how that generally is used by housing providers up and down the country, if that would be helpful.
Can we do that as an appendix for the next meeting, please?
Certainly.
Okay. Mrs. Hack.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to stay with the void calculations. Chair, I've got a problem with this. On one hand, we've got the homelessness going up, and on the other hand, we've got the void target that we haven't been able to achieve. And according to my calculation, it makes something like 8 years that if you calculate it in terms of how many days, even if we go by, what was that, to 40.66 days of 79 properties. That's something like 8 years that we could be losing income on. We're paying probably extra money to put people in temporary accommodation. I think Mr. Alam asked, what are the problems that we're facing to achieve that target? Why are we not able to achieve it? Is it advertising? Is it housing repairs? What is it that we haven't been able to achieve the target?
In general terms, it's a mixture of everything. Some properties, believe it or not, we advertise them and people just don't bid on them. The most sought after property from housing providers is a 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom house. At Oby and Wigston, we have got approximately 300 3-bedroom houses. People on the housing register think we've got this massive houses. Flats, people don't want flats. That's the bottom line. They want a house, and they will not bid on houses, and that creates a short demand for those properties, and it's difficult to let those. some of it is down to works. If where works exceed a certain amount in terms of finance value, we have to get 3 prices to get that, 3 quotes to get that work done. That's what we're required to do in terms of finance. That is obviously a time delay in that. That can be up to a week just to get, once we've written the specification and put it out to a mini tender. It takes a week to get that back, and then the delay comes that we award that, and then the contractor has to mobilise for that. And then there are some internal factors. So a property might become vacant today, and then when we get in there, we find it's full of possessions, and then we have to do a series of finding out whether we have to serve a notice to the former tenant to remove those possessions, or we have to remove them and store those possessions before we can go into a property and carry out the works. So there's lots of factors involved in that void process. And again, I can pick up on some of the more on some of those factors in the briefing note for the next meeting.
Can we have a breakdown at some point of the type of houses that are empty, the reason why they're empty, and the period that they are empty for, please?
Yes, I mean, I can think of one house that we've got in Wixton, which has been empty for some time. It's been running for a through-the-floor lift for a person with disabilities, and there's a long delay on getting the through-the-floor lift, actually from the manufacturer. That's one reason. That's one property. Also, you've got to bear in mind that what standard you want to re-let the properties at. Some authorities re-let them in quite a poor condition. Do we really want to do that? We need to do some of the minor works before the tenant goes in. So there's lots of different factors that you can take into account. So I'm sure Mr. Ayer will do that on his briefing note. All right.
Thank you.
Mr. Lloydell.
Thank you. Is that okay?
Yep.
Thank you, Chair. So is page 26 and 27. This is the Housing Revenue Capital Programme. Agree with what's already been said, right? When each budget head, it's actual committed expenditure for. I could bring you, if I may, to page 27. Home Improvement Programme. You start off with that budget, 1297, but then the actual and committed expenditure shows an overspend. Down to the original figure right at the beginning. What would help, obviously, for me, when I look at that, if you've got an overspend there, it means you've got to cut the services to bring it back down to the original figure. That's not helpful. The same page at the bottom, housing block improvements, 2,500, it's 101. There's an underspend there. But it says it's going to bring it back on target at the end. If we had actual and committed separated on these, it would help to tell us whether or not home improvement programs is overspent. We're going to get back to the result. What are you going to cut to bring it back down? Generates those sort of questions for you, which if it's separated, it becomes more accurate. It will probably eliminate some of those questions if we can see how it's formulating. Does that make sense?
Yes, I mean, I think you should know by now, I don't like going overspend on any budget at any time, and I always do the best to bring it back on track before the end of the financial year.
Okay, can my observation again, if I may, on page 11, 3.6, second paragraph, would help, of course, is that it says we're going to have 2 additional caretakers. Well, it says in the financial report, head of paid service, chief finance officer, the report is satisfactory. What would help is to say, well, where's the money coming from to pay 2 caretakers?
Right, Mr. A, can you explain that one, please?
Yes, Chair, the two post housing caretakers were already on the establishment. They were previously titled housing repairs operatives. We've just repackaged the title and the job description, so there's no extra funding. These posts were already on the establishment. We've just revisited those positions post and defined what we want out from those roles, and that the title and the role of a caretaker, an estate's caretaker, was the outcome of that sort of review of those two posts. So there's no additional funding been sought for those because they were already on the establishment.
May then, Chair, that's helpful. Thank you very much indeed. But that might be useful if that's already identified in either the Finance Officer report to say costs are met by existing, or you put it in the report that suggests that those two caretakers, not additional posts, they're already in the budget. That would help, if that's okay. Can that?
Okay, yeah. Any other questions at all? No. Mr. Thorpe, you'll make any comments before I move on to finance?
No, nothing more from me, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Finance update. Mr. Campbell with us, or?
Yes, I am, Chair, if you can hear me.
Anything to point out in your report, or can we just look at it and make a few comments as we go through?
In the report, I'll just point out a couple of things. The test and trace that comes under the benefits section 4.1. We're actually recruiting for a test and trace officer to help with the backlog. This is grant funded, but with the rest of the report, it's as the stated, outlined, and with our collection rates on the council tax and the business rates, they're lower than intended, but action has been taken to remedy this. So, for example, with the council tax, we've one of the things that the council tax team had to do was make sure the information recorded that the correct persons was actually in the home, had the correct name of the person in their home, and they had to go through a list of all the different council tax, making sure it's the correct occupier, and if the property was vacant, and they're up to date with that. And also they had to review any discounts and exemptions, which the team is actually doing, which puts them in a position where they're able to bill the council, the people liable for the council tax. So I would expect council tax collection rates to start going up shortly. And then just to highlight with the business rates, actions have been put in place at the moment because the business rates collection is low. So a few things have been done at the moment. One, the visiting officer, someone internally within the council will need to go out and inspect properties to making sure they're being charged the right business rates and the information they've provided is correct. Second, we've got people within our business rates team checking their rateable values and cross-checking it with information from the rates office. And the third action is that the team are also checking people are correctly being billed, or whether any should come off the system or any new ones should be reclassified. So there are quite a number of activities actually taking place to improve the business rates collection at this point in time. That's all I would like to highlight at this point, and Chair, I'm open to any questions.
Mr. Campbell, do you anticipate reaching the target by the end of the financial year, or think you might fall short?
Right. So with the council tax collection, I'm assuming we're going to get close to the target. With the business rates, I assume we're going to fall short, like a number of other local authorities who are in a similar position.
Okay, thank you. Right. Questions? Mr. Boyce?
Thank you, Chair. The obvious question is, if we fail to achieve target, does that have a knock-on effect on the revenue budget?
Right. If we fail to achieve the target within this financial year, we're still liable to collect that money, which we can do, say, into the next financial year. We are still okay because for this financial year, part of the government has given us a lump sum of money because a lot of businesses were 100% exempt due to the COVID situation, or now that's gone to 66%. So we've got a lot of money which we don't have to pay back straight away to the government. We pay it back over a phased approach. So not collecting the full amount won't impact us directly this year, but we need to still do the collection, or else long term it wouldn't have an impact. I hope I've explained myself. But at the moment, as far as cash flow is concerned, no, it won't have an impact. But if we don't keep on trying to collect them in the long term, when I say long term, I mean over the next 2 to 3 years, yes, it would have an impact.
So, to be clear, any failure to collect now will not have an immediate impact on the revenue.
Not at this point. Not at this point. It would have a knock-on effect, say, in a couple of years' time.
Okay, one of the obvious points that we need to be careful of is the accuracy of the NNDR, because clearly, if certain organisations no longer need to pay for whatever reason, if that is accrued as a debt and then we correct it later, we will have already paid all the other people and we may not get the whole amount back. So the accuracy at the end of this year becomes that much greater in terms of its imperative.
That's true, but also what we have to do is we have to submit various different returns at different parts of the year, and we have a position statement of what the number of business rates people are chargeable. That does fluctuate throughout the year, so that's taking an account of the money we have to repay back to the government, and also obviously that would have effect on the collection. So, for instance, at one point in the year, I'm just making up figures. The target might be we're supposed to get 19 million, and when we have to do another return, it might drop to 18, or it might fluctuate and go a bit higher. But you're right what you're saying, but we do have to do regular reports back to the government office, but it evens itself out over a period of a year.
Okay, any other questions at all? No. The chart on 4.5, unfortunately, I can't read on the paper copy, too small, and some of my colleagues on their electronic devices still can't read it. So only I think Mr. Boyce can read it on his computer, and Mr. Gill can get it on his. So, before we start voting on anything, can we know what we're voting on, please?
You don't want me to read it out again, do you?
No, Mr. Gill can point out what the red one is to us.
The red one, Chair, is post-COVID achieving or exceeding NNDR collection rate target. And the red reads at 44.93%, 10.99% short of the target of 55.92%. Formal recovery recommenced and laying formal complaint at court. I think that relates to the fact that in the body of the report, Minister Campbell explains that although the courts have reopened, they are still currently limiting the number of cases that can be presented at any one time. It obviously has a knock-on effect on the ability to recover that money quicker.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lloydell, wish to make a comment?
No, sorry, it's passed now. You've moved on, sorry.
Okay, okay. Thank you, Mr. Campbell. I think that's you done for now. Page 14, customer service and transformation. Mrs. Fisher.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple of points just to cover. At the page 14, 5.1, at the last service delivery committee, members requested further information and a breakdown of statistical data, particularly relating to the customer service centre. And that, if I can now refer members to page 34, that's in Appendix 3. I'm happy to take questions on that if members have any questions that they'd like to ask.
Okay, Mrs. Broadley is going to ask a question online.
Thank you, Chair. It's not so much about what is actually written here. I wanted to ask about the call centre being open at lunchtimes. It was mentioned at the last service delivery, and I think it was policy and finance. And I would just like to know, are we now open for calls at lunchtimes?
Councillor Broadley, no, we are not. As members are aware, that decision was made on the 24th of March last year due to the pandemic, and it was based operationally, which gives us greater efficiency for the team to deliver a proper customer call centre. So at this moment in time, they are not open at lunchtime, and there is no plans to open it at lunchtime either.
Right, I'd like to come back on that. This, to open at lunchtime, was a policy decision that was made by councillors. Yes, I admit some time ago, but it's policy, it's council policy. I accept there might have been a problem during the COVID situation, but the policy has never been changed. And until the policy has been changed, we should be opening at lunchtimes. If we are going to disregard any policy that has been done a few years ago because things have changed, then what is the point of policy? The policy is there, which states that we should be open at lunchtime. I get numerous complaints, and I have checked with other councils, and we are the only one that closes at lunchtime. And because we don't now have a face-to-face interaction with our residents, they want to speak to somebody, and they're having difficulty in getting in contact. I have done myself when I've rang the main number. It takes quite a long time to answer, and then, you know, somebody will get back to you and nobody gets back to you. And others, not myself in particular, but want to speak to somebody on their lunch break, and there is nobody there. And, you know, I have a niece that works for Leicestershire County Council in their customer services. They have a team and they work out what time somebody starts, what time somebody finishes, and who is going to be answering the phones at lunchtime. So I understand what you're saying, but from my point of view, it was a policy that is in place and has not been revoked. So therefore, we should follow that policy until it is changed. Because if we don't do it for this, what other policy are we going to just ignore?
Councillor Broadley, if I can comment on that, I understand your point about policy, and your point around that. I think what I would comment on is that customer service centre is still virtual, and it hasn't gone back to Bell Street, and Bell Street has closed. And therefore, to offer that service, we are managing a team of 13 staff virtually. What I would also say is, if we are looking now at operating over a lunchtime period, we will need to look at increasing resource for that, and that comes at a cost.
I don't accept that, I'm sorry, because what you do is, with the staff you've got, some people will work the lunchtime, some people will start early, some people will start later. You know, I feel extremely strongly about this, that as members, we are being ignored and the policy is being ignored. I'm not going to take it any further tonight. I will speak to others and probably take it to the next policy meeting. Thank you.
Boyce?
I'm aware of the it only makes sense if it reflects the need of our residents. At the moment, I'm told that there's no evidence that our residents are being disadvantaged by the centre being closed. However, totally, I'm told that it does. Therefore, I think the proper way forward is to review the policy and review it against against evidence. And therefore, I would ask that over the next 3 months, between now and the next services committee, we review. Now, unfortunately, the only way that customer services can review is by complaint. Therefore, I would urge all members to, if they have a complaint, note the time and date, then send that complaint in to Mrs. Fisher. And that way we will establish whether there is, by evidence, a need, and then we can establish whether or not to amend the policy. But as we stand at the moment, I do agree with Councillor Broadley, there is a policy in existence. I also agree with Mrs. Fisher that that policy may need to be changed. So the answer is we review the policy, we look at the evidence and then make a decision. So I move that that's added to the report this evening.
Okay. Somebody wish to come back, do they not?
Chair, if I may, Councillor Boyce, to that point, the customer service centre does actually do customer satisfaction surveys at the moment, and we cover 5 different areas, which is around their skills, knowledge, treated fairly as a customer, early resolution and quality of service. There is a free-flowing box that they are asked, and we do these via email or online or verbally, which the customer service centre team do when they take a call. There is a free-flowing box, and at this moment in time, that those surveys have been running for a year, and we've had no formal complaints about not being open at lunchtime. However, to your point, what we can do is add to those surveys the lunchtime element or opening hours element, and as requested, report back to the next service delivery committee. What I would like to suggest is we don't do December, because that is a bit of a difficult month, bearing in mind we're shut down over the Christmas period, and therefore would not give a true reflection of that month of calls and people phoning in. So sure. I would recommend January and February, and then maybe a 2-month period, and report back in the March, if that's acceptable.
From my point of view, I think that is understandable. And I think the fact that we can put it in the survey, that's good. But I would also urge members that should they receive a complaint, they need to put the complaint in writing to Mrs. Fisher. That way it's recorded. And if we have a problem, that will become apparent, and then we can discuss whether or not to change the policy along with practice.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Morris?
Thank you, Chair. I see us not opening at lunchtime for phone calls is bad customer service. Now, for those of us who work standard office working hours, 9 till 5, if you're in an office, you can't make the personal phone call, speak to the council. So you do it on your lunch hour, because you're working till 5 and the office might be closed. So you do it on your lunch hour. So it makes great sense to have the phone lines open at lunchtime, because not all of us are retired. Not all of us are able to make calls between 9 and 12 or 2 and 5. So it just seems like we're offering poor customer service by closing these phone lines. There's clearly a need for it. All the councillors here know it. And making a note of a complaint, that isn't going to achieve anything. We have it in the policy. We should stick by that. We did it. We made the change whilst the COVID pandemic. That currently, of course, the pandemic's not gone away, but we need to stick to the policy. And therefore, the phone line should be open over lunchtime for people to contact the council. It's as simple as that. And I think that if we go against that, we might as well bring every policy back then. and make the changes. It doesn't need to be evidence, it's clear as day. People need to be able to contact the council during lunch times and normal working hours, and it's as simple as that. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Well, you all heard you say, and Mr. Boyce has made a recommendation, which I tend to support, bring back the evidence if members got any problems. Let Mrs. Fisher know. That reasonable?
Yeah.
Mrs. Broadley?
I don't agree with Councillor Boyce's thing about the complaints. I totally agree with Councillor Morris that it is poor customer service. People, you know, I've had people ring me up and say, you know, I've tried to get in touch with the council. I've had to get somebody else to do it. They don't necessarily complain as such on paper or whatever. A lot of them can't, you know, the elderly residents can't use the computer anyway. But it is poor customer services that we are closed at lunchtime. And, you know, it's okay saying we will amend the policy. The policy is in place now, and we are not following the policy. It is very, very poor customer service. I don't agree with Councillor Boyce. Because I'm remote, I can't vote on it, and I certainly wouldn't. Thank you.
This is an interesting situation, isn't it? We've got a recommendation from Mr. Boyce, which has been seconded. Is that Mr. Carter second that? Did I say? Yeah. You've got Mr. Morris made a recommendation. I haven't seen a seconder for that.
I'll second that.
But you can't. You've got to deal with the recommendation that you've got on the table.
Yes.
Which is Councillor Boyce, seconded by Councillor Carter. If that falls.
Yes.
And isn't passed, then you can move on to Councillor
I was
Morris.
hoping that we wouldn't have anybody second the second motion.
Well,
anyway, so all in favour of Mr. Boyce's recommendation?
Yep.
Okay, anybody against?
1, 2, 3, 4.
4.
1, 2, 3, 4.
4. So that's carried.
Yep. Okay.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's fine. So it's added to the recommendations then.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Can we move on now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. We move on now. We've got all the details about the complaints, customer service satisfaction surveys. Anything else on those? Refuse and recycling. On pages 16. Any comments on that at all? No. Page 17. Stubby Towers Football Club. Is there, I'm not asking how much, is there a rent payable on this, Mr. Gill?
Thank you, Chair. The council is currently in the process of negotiating a 25-year lease with the football club for a nominal rent. Once that lease has been entered into, then OB Howard will take responsibility for preparing and fully insuring lease so that they are responsible for keeping the building in full repair and in good condition. They'll also be responsible for all of the utility costs, business rates, water, sewage, telecoms, etc., etc. And they will enjoy the right to use the surrounding football pitches in conjunction with the pavilion. Chair.
Thank you. Can we ask, are they maintaining the pitches?
I've not been informed at this stage of that, Chair, but what I can do is I will check with the solicitor dealing with the matter and respond to members outside of the meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Boyce indicated, and Mrs. Hack, and then Mr. Carter. So we've got quite a few people now.
Basically, Mr. Gill, you've indicated there is a saving. So whilst we may be giving a peppercorn rent, we are in effect making a saving, which is a perverse negative income. So can at some point we've been made aware of what the saving is against our current budget, so that Mr. Comrie can make sure it's netted off for next year's?
It certainly can do, Councillor Boyce. I mean, there's also the extension to the pavilion, which is going to be developed over the next couple of years with Section 106 monies. So in terms of looking at the impact for the council, if you have a much bigger pavilion, which would be available to rent out to other organisations for parties and things, that has to be offset, that loss of income has to be offset against what we're saving in terms of not having to maintain the building.
And can I just ask, what's the break clause on the lease?
Without looking at, I don't have the details in front of me. I can certainly look at that, Chair, and get those details through.
Chair, the point I'm making is there is an actual saving now against what's in our budget now by doing this. And we need to know what that is, not necessarily this evening, so that we can ensure that that's netted off for next year's budget.
Yep.
Okay, now we got Mr. Carter.
Thank you, Chair. My question was related to car parks. The second paragraph of that note indicates that things are moving forward. Do we have any indication of when the permits will be available for sale? I've had a number of inquiries from residents who are keen to purchase a permit and like to get on with it.
Christmas present.
That's a split between Mr. Gill and Mrs. Fisher, I think, that one.
The position is that we are moving at pace. As you'll be aware, the date for implementation has started as 4th of January. This week, all the signage has been taken down and has been removed to the manufacturers so that it can be overlaid with the new signage, and then that will be reinstalled hopefully by the end of the week into next week. The number of machines have been delivered. They were delivered yesterday. They'll be installed shortly. The comms and marketing team have agreed with Corporate Assets a comms plan, and that comms plan will start being activated and rolled out from the 1st of December, i.e. tomorrow. And it's the intention to make sure that those permits are available to purchase middle of December. As I've said to the staff at the staff briefing the other day, you know, if you want to buy your loved one a nice Christmas present, then a parking permit is available. So, you know, we are aware that people are very keen, but we just need to stage it to make sure that everything is in place before we press the button.
Okay. Finish with that, John, or do you want to? Mr. Boyce, happy with that?
Happy is an interesting comment. I'm content.
Content. Mrs. Hack.
Thank you, Chair. Going back to OBLs, does the lease extend to weekdays as well as the weekends whilst they're playing football, or is it exclusive use of the pavilion and the pitches? And also, once the pavilion extended, do they get the income? Does council get a proportion of that income?
My understanding is that they get exclusive use of the pavilion, and exclusive use will mean weekdays and weekends. Going back to what we're doing, there is a break clause which allows us to terminate the lease at any time subject to 6 months prior notice in writing. They have the authority to hire out the land and buildings to third parties. So the income would go to OBLs and not to the council. And we have a clause which permits us to use the building for civic purposes. I think you'll all be aware it's used as a polling station. So we will retain a right to use it free of charge for that.
Uplift on the rent at all?
There will be a deed of variation, but I'm not aware that there'll be any uplift on the rent when the extension has been completed. But I need to check that with Mr. Ball.
I just think it's important we think about those things when the extension goes ahead.
Yep.
Any other comments at all?
I think, it's just concerned we get contracts, especially with councils and that sort of thing. We will get a report back on the full review of that deal with the OBL. Will you get so we can see and then challenge and.
I think the way forward that is a private note to members, which is not open to the public. It's a commercial.
And that does fall in the scheme of delegation down to officers to enter into leases under a certain value. So it's like, for instance, sale of land, if it's over £30,000, it has to come to members. If it's below that, it can be dealt with by officers. But I'm happy to circulate the heads of terms once they've been finally agreed, along with the information in respect to the savings, as Councillor Boyce requested. So I'm quite happy to put a paper together and share that with members.
That would be very helpful, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right, Mr. Allen, another question?
Thank you, Chair. My question is in regards to injuries and liabilities. Who's going to take that if something happens at the park? Is it going to be the owls? Is it going to be injured?
So the tenant, i.e. the hours, must at its own expense comply with all statutory and legal requirements to ensure health and safety standards associated with the carrying out of the activities on there. Basically, the position is that they will be required to have insurance, and in the first instance, they will be liable in the event of an accident. Having said that, as the ultimate landowner, it's not always possible to dispense with all liability under the Occupiers Liability Act. There is an order, so the tenant in the first instance is responsible, and it's down to the officers to ensure that the appropriate insurances are in place so that if there is an accident, that'll be covered off by them.
Right, Mrs. Hack.
Right,
sorry.
I'm going to come back on that. So say, for example, can we still hold them to account if they are difficult neighbours with the local residents, so to speak? If anything happens there, they have to maintain fencing or the grass or whatever. Can we hold them to account as an authority, even though we're giving them license, if other people are complaining against them too?
Yes, ultimately, I mean, there's various options outside of the land. I mean, if they are causing a nuisance, a statutory nuisance, it'll be dealt with under the Environmental Protection Act. If they're causing a noise issue by having raves at the pavilion on a Saturday night, then again, EPA. Ultimately, if we're unhappy with the way that they're operating at the site, we can exercise the break clause and give them 6 months' notice and say, that's it. So there are various mechanisms by which we can control what occurs on the site.
Thank you. Mrs. Hack.
Thank you, Chair. Just very quickly, I'm a bit concerned about this lease. I know we're going to probably make a saving, but I'm concerned about excluding the rest of our residents. I hope that this doesn't become the sole use for the football players and exclude other park users from using the park.
Again, without looking at the detail, but I mean, the position is they have the right to use the park on match days and you know, when they've got fixtures, and football tends to take place on a Saturday or a Sunday, and perhaps in the evening training session, the park should then be available for the rest of the time for other residents. They're not having the whole of the park in terms of the pitches. I think there's probably about 2/3 when they're playing, but you know, that means that people will still be able to go into the park and use. The only thing that they'll have exclusive use of is the pavilion.
Okay. Right, Mr. Boyce next.
Chair, presumably the health and safety in terms of the green space is ours. The health and safety in terms of the built environment will then end up being theirs. That's the case.
Yes, other than when they are playing football, they will be required to have insurance for their players. So that should take away any issues, you know, occurring during a football match.
Okay, Mr. Lloydall.
Yes, thank you. I'm experienced with this with another club in your area. You said that they're going to be able to lease it, to have lease it to other people, etc., which is you can expect to want to raise money for the club and everything else. But will they want an alcohol licence?
If they do want an alcohol licence, I'm not sure whether the premises are license, I don't think they are, I mean, listed once or twice, then they'll have to make an application. And if there are any objections from interested parties, then we will go down the appropriate process under the Licensing Act 2003. And people will be able to make representations if the police want to make representations, and ultimately a subcommittee of members will make that decision.
I appreciate that. What I'm trying to do is preempt something that you might want to deal with through the contract before it gets to that stage, having witnessed a football club in another area, noise nuisance, etc., because they've got alcohol served, they've got discos, and they've got people coming out and in the area, which then generates problems for the local ward members and so on. I'm just trying to, I don't want to killjoy it because it's not.
I fully appreciate what you're saying, Councillor Roydell. I think the issue is these heads of terms have been agreed already. It would be now difficult to start making amendments to them. If they did make an application for a licence for alcohol, then what we would do is we would deal with any conditions under the licence. So, you know, we've recently had one where we've required a noise limiter to be installed. And so things like that we would look at. But I think we're too far down the road now to start making too many amendments of heads of terms, is my good feeling.
Okay, all right. No more questions. Thank you, Mrs. Fisher.
Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Gill's on the chopping block now. Straight through, you got the car parks, you know when that's going to be. January the 4th, that's online. Community centres, nothing in use yet, but hopefully be coming on stream sooner rather than later. We're losing income there. Are we contacted the people who used to rent them?
Yeah, and one of the issues is that some of the groups, the organisers, have been self-isolating. It's not helped because that there was the delay in the lockdown to the 19th of July. And since then, we still have had high levels of infection about. So there is a reluctance by a number of people. And just on that point, if I just quickly flick through in terms of environmental health and licensing. So business support, we've been continuing to supply that. And as you will all be aware, this morning we had new guidance came out with regard to face masks. So my team have now assumed a role in enforcing that in terms of face masks. So again, the pressure is going to be on us to try and achieve the targets that we've got. I'm really pleased that we were able to get some money from the Food Standards Agency. So we've now been able to triage all of the food businesses because I know some members are a bit concerned. So that's well done. We've also managed to get some support from another authority in terms of environmental health officers who are conducting inspections for us. So we are now putting back on where we were. Licensing, we've started the competency test again. So depending on what happens with Omicron, you know, we're hoping to continue with that. And the only other thing I wanted to make a mention of going through, we've got there from electrical services, which is standard and community safety. The ASB in terms of drone usage at Ellis Park, I know it's caused an issue with a number of people. It does mention in there doing some work with the police, and I'm happy to confirm, and I'm not going to give any dates, but we have got a joint operation with the Leicestershire Police drone squad, so that we can try and deal with the use of drones over at Ellis Park. But other than that, I don't think there's anything I want to comment on, but I'm happy to take any questions from members.
The litter bin grant, I'm going to ask a list of all the new litter bin locations is put on for the next agenda. So when that's done, so we know where they're all going. Okay. Anything else for Mr. Gill? Yeah, that's off light. Leisure Centre Services. I noticed that when I've been up to Brox Hill that the cafe doesn't seem to be open long.
It has reduced opening hours, shall I say. I think it's about 11 till 3,
yes.
Something like Obviously,
Is that a commercial consideration by the contractor?
yes, it is. I mean, the take up is not as good as it could be. So obviously,
Picking your words carefully.
I'm trying to be very careful, which is unusual for me, Councillor Walter. But no, obviously, in terms of the cost benefit analysis, at the moment, it is not worthwhile for the current operator to open it for longer hours than it's open. I think
Okay.
that sums the position.
But no doubt that will change shortly, will it not?
Yes, given the current plans for that area.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else from Mr. Gill? The Wixton Pool doesn't seem to be performing quite as well as it ought to.
Is this the conversation that you and I had? Yes. For the benefit of the members, Councillor broadly raised an issue with me with regard to access at Wixton Pool for people that had physical and mental disabilities, where previously they'd been given sessions. We do have a meeting with the operator next Tuesday. Brilliant. So the matter will be raised then, and then we can report back on it to members. Dingley.
Oh, yes, he's on next. Yes.
Well, I think he wants to make a comment on this part of the report, Chair.
Okay, all right then.
We met with the SLM provider today, and they have updated. They will be putting out one session on in both centres starting in January.
Okay, that's good news.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, we're on to item 9 now on page 40. This is the facility update.
So we've operated on the performance report, Chair. You've gone ahead of this.
We're all happy with the report that's before us,
With the amendment.
with the amendment voice put forward. We better indicate us, Mr. Yes?
Yes, we're actually voting.
Yes.
Say so.
I asked you to indicate, actually, not.
I think that's unanimous, so
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Tucker. Thank you for reminding us. The 9 now then, please, on page 40. Before, it's imminent to make a decision on this one. And Mr. Dingley will wish to comment. However,
who's going to present the report?
you want to present it, Mr. Dingley?
Good evening, all. Thanks for taking the time to hear me tonight. So just to give you a background on this report, at the last service delivery meeting on the 7th, it was unanimously resolved that members of the committee would forward their suggestions to officers regarding proposed expenditure by the end of September. Only 2 suggestions were put forward, with both falling under the remit of the corporate asset team, with one to be actioned moving forward. This still leaves us with funding of 436,219 to be allocated. I would refer councillors to Appendix 1 on page 49, where there is a list of all proposed projects. These projects have been selected from a list unanimously resolved by the Policy, Finance and Development Committee on the 16th of March, 2021. So this evening, this report asks members to make a decision about tennis provision in the borough as set out at 3.5.2, which is on page 44 and 45, and confirm which projects, as set out in Appendix 1 on page 49, are committed the funding is committed to moving forward. And page 46 and 47 have 2 tables, which are table 3 and 4, providing examples of how the sports facilities funds could be allocated to proposed projects moving forward. So I will pass it over to the chair now.
I'm going to recommend we look on page 46 at table 3. I'm going to suggest we remove the 3G pitch from the football facility at Blaby Road Park. I think we need a bit some more work to do on that before that one goes ahead anyway. So if we remove that and insert the BMX track at Willow Park with the goalposts and maintenance, my mathematics bring that to £439,000, which commits the whole of the budget, well, in fact, a little bit over. But that is my recommendation. That fulfils the wishes of members to have the tennis courts at Uplands Park. It also fulfils their wishes to have the turf cricket practice nets at Upland Park, because there's a perceived need for those in that area. I think the goalposts are important, the sockets are important, and Willow Park tennis courts I think will be useful as well, and the skateboard facilities. That's my recommendation. Have I any comments on that? Mr. Boyce?
Thank you. I do agree with what you've just said. However, I think it would be appropriate that the football 3G pitch on Blaby Road Park goes out to public consultation. The simple fact is this idea has been around at least 10 years, I think possibly. And the problem is that the reason that local ward councillors are against it is we believe public opinion is against it. And we believe our residents are against it. So the logical thing to do is go and find out properly. So I think absolutely agree with your proposal, but I would also add in that the 3G pitch on Blaby Road Park is consulted with the public to see if it should remain as a potential development.
And you'd have to add it back to the section 106 list.
Yeah, then it goes back onto the 106 list for any
Absolutely.
Future contributions.
Or it's removed because frankly the public are against it.
Yes.
We have to make a decision, but it's not our decision, it's the public decision, it's the public's park.
Sorry, Mr. Morris, I can't see you tonight because of Adam Adams' head is in.
Happy to come back to public consultation. What I would ask, I know it's going to be picky, that we see what is actually going to go out to public consultation before it goes out, because offering the public a 3G pitch sounds fantastic. Telling them that it's really going to be the college's 3G pitch, they're going to be completely in control of it, and you're going to lose some of Blaby Road Park, sounds a bit different than we're going to get you a 3G pitch. Because if I was told I was going to get a 3G pitch, I'd be like, oh, great. Well, the college is going to be in charge of it and you're losing some of your parks. So fine with the public consultation. I believe that's the right way to go, because then we're listening to our residents. But I'd like to know what is going out in the consultation before it goes out to the residents to ensure that they get the whole picture and not the headline.
Well, can we make a recommendation then that is done and the 3 ward councillors are involved in that process? Okay? And
with all due respect, Chair, no, this is a council consultation. Our role, should it come up, is to listen to our residents. So we don't want to be, we're not putting it forward. The council's putting it forward. We can then have the freedom to make our own views known.
the point I'm making, Mr. Boyce, is the fact that if the 3 ward members look at the consultation paper before it goes out, it didn't go to the whole committee.
Oh, in terms of what goes out to the public, I'm more than happy that we sign it off.
Yes.
That it's the council consulting, not the ward member.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah. Mr. Dingley's got his hand up.
Sorry, just to clarify, we're having a consultation on a 3G pitch in South Wigston, is that correct? Or are we having a consultation on a 3G pitch at Blaby Road Park, sorry?
Blaby Road Park.
Okay, yep.
That doesn't form part of this process.
We take it out.
It's over and above that. It forms part, if it's acceptable, it forms part of the capital programme for a future year to be funded by 106 money. All happy with that?
So you made your...
I've made a recommendation. Mr. Boyce, I think, is second to that recommendation. Did you, Mr. Boyce?
Sorry? Yes. What?
Yes, I would forward on. That's that'll do. Okay, so if you look at table 3 on page 46, I've removed the 3G football pitch from Blaby Road Park and added in the what was it call it? Let's go parkour or BMX facilities at Willow Park. And also there's some extra money for goalposts and maintenance amounting to £17,000. All happy with that?
Yeah, no problem.
Mr. Tucker's got that down, has he? So we know what we're voting on?
Yep.
Thank you. Right, so it's proposed and seconded. Can we vote on that, please? Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. As far as I'm aware, that's the conclusion of this evening's business. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.